Greetings, YouTube. If you hear noise outside, I apologize. Someone's throwing off a lot of fireworks. Maybe it's the city. I don't know. Um, I was looking at a database on my phone the other day, and it's a database of D&D questions people have posed in the past and answers people have given them. It's a static database I've downloaded onto my phone through the Kiwix app, Kiwix. Um, and one of the questions under the Pathfinder First Edition category, and there's like 600 or more questions in this particular category, was why do animals not have the survival skill? And someone's like, that's a really good idea. Animals should have that as a freebie or yada, yada, yada. But I read that and the first thing that popped into my head is, why would you ask that? Now, the survival skill in Pathfinder First Edition or 3.5, and in actually many other systems, is in place so that when a person is outside of civilization, they have a means of acquiring water, food, and shelter, and heat. Those are the things you need to survive. If you have those four things, you will make it. Okay? Staying dry and some medical attention will help. But if you got those four things, you usually will stay alive long enough to get medical attention. But that's for when you're outside society, when outside civilization. That's what the survival skill is for. When I'm not here, if I suddenly found myself plunked into a wilderness, but I happen to have a handy dandy little survival knife with me, maybe I could get my way out. Also a means of making fire would be really useful. I don't have one on my body at the moment. And that's because that's not where we live. We don't live in the wilderness. We live here. And even people that are living in a rural environment who have far more intimacy with the natural world than I do, they still live in society. They still have a civilization around them. They still have homes and wells and farm animals and plants they've planted and shelter. They have everything they need to survive, well, if they're good at their job. And that's still not a survival situation. Survival is when you're out in the boonies, outside your environs. An animal in the wilderness is within their environs. That is where they belong. Now, if you were to dump an animal out of their proper environment, say take a polar bear and dump them into the Amazon, that's going to be a bad thing for the polar bear. The polar bear is very likely not going to survive. By that same measure, if you take me and dump me into a place where the only language spoken around me is Farsi, I'm going to have a really difficult time. I may not die instantaneously. My life is not going to be smooth. And finding a way to survive in that environment would be much more difficult than trying to do it here in the US of A. Animals are in their environment. So they are not in a survival situation any more than I have to make a roll to find water, food, shelter, or heat right here. I've got water. In fact, it's even got a nice ice cube in it. All right? Food's in my kitchen. I got light. I don't need heat right now. I got fans going because it's warm. I have shelter. I have everything I need. I don't have to make a roll for it. And an animal doesn't have to do that either. They're where they belong. They are home. And the reality is that in the wilds, just like in civilization, sometimes organisms don't survive. Every day people die in societies. Every day bad things happen to people within civilizations. I'll give you a little example of something. I have an app on my phone. It's called Newsbreak. And they send me little notifications. One of the things they've been buzzing a lot lately is about the fact that my city has been having a crime spree. And the other day we were talking about 14 crimes being registered in one day. And I think my city has roughly like 140,000 people in it. So 14 crimes in 140,000 people, that's a pretty low percentage of people to crimes. Now, maybe if someone had been paying attention all along and been adding all these things up, maybe they've been finding out that that's the rate that you have crimes all the time. I don't have the data. I'm sure that the person that wrote that article doesn't have the data either, but it makes people feel afraid. It makes them read the article and, of course, be exposed to the ads therein. Um, and, oh, by the way, if you ever see a Temu ad, Temu, it's a purchasing site like Wish, don't get involved with them. They scrape your data in a big way. Um, I mentioned that because the article I read about the crimes was fronted by a Temu advertisement. Um, but that's an example of people being afraid in their environment when in actuality they're probably not actually being exposed to any more dangers today than they were yesterday or they will be tomorrow. When you live in a large group of people, bad things are going to happen. Some of them are intentional. Some of them aren't. Car accidents. People, do you know how many people fall off ladders or fall off chairs while they're changing light bulbs, hit their head on the sink in the bathroom, and they just die? Bad things happen. And in the wilderness, bad things happen to animals. But in neither situation does a person in their home have to roll a skill check to change the damn light bulb any more than an animal has to make a skill check to find water. They know where the water is. If they didn't, they wouldn't be here. That's how evolution works. If an animal can't survive, it doesn't pass its genes or technically its alleles onto the next generation. So the idea of asking why animals don't have the survival skill struck me as really bizarre, and it still does. Because it seems to show me that someone that really doesn't understand how animals function in the real world, and apparently they don't seem to understand how we function in society, in civilization. I don't have to roll to find food here or water. Now you cut my power off, you cut my water off, you take my civilization away from me, then I'm in a survival situation. But right now, I'm not. I'm not in any danger. I'm as safe as I'm going to be. There's nothing I can do to improve my safety from 1 minute to the next in this my environment. I am as likely to have something bad happen at this moment than I was an hour ago, or I will be an hour from now. But I don't have to roll a skill check, and your average bear or squirrel or bird or snake doesn't have to roll a skill check for surviving in where they live. So tell me, what do you think about this? What do you think about the idea of animals needing a survival skill? Because to me, it's an absurdity. It's where they live. And you don't need to roll for surviving where you live.